Okay, I'm going to pause here in this long sequence of Factorio videos because we've come to a time where it's good to think about testing. As a software engineer, I've spent my entire career building complex systems and then modifying them, which requires some way to verify that your system continues to work after you've modified it. Automated testing. Key item. And in the last video, in my creative mode, which I'm now going to just include this in my main build, I went ahead and set up these stations, which will enable when they have creative mode enabled and the sources of materials are active. And this means that I can fire this base up and enable the science and have it crank right up and get working and verify the throughput. If I were to remove the creative mod from the main save, then I would have to replop all of this stuff each time I wanted to run a test. It's equivalent to integrating a test branch into your main code to test it, and then claiming that the code without your stuff integrated still works. Previous employer of mine had a mantra for this. Basically, they said, test what you fly what you test. Which means that if you have to put stuff in your code to test it, you need to leave it there when you deploy it. Because removing something from your code that was there during testing may break the code, but your tests, of course, would still work because they test with it there. So, I am going to test. In this case, the test is, can we achieve 900 science per minute and maintain 900 science per minute? So I'm going to test that just by turning on science consumption from now on, which means these stations are going to stay here until we have an adequate source of these particular items elsewhere in the base. It also means that when I add a producer for an item, as I get that part of the factory completed, I come back and I disable this. So all the work I did last time for setting these guys up to disable the train station if creative mod wasn't here, this is all completely useless, because I will never be turning the stuff. I'll never be removing these matter sources from the build as long as I need them. So this is, again, it's what we call module-based design, where each module, we rough out the module in a prototype fashion. Well, here's a prototype module for creating low-density structures. Here's our prototype module. And we use that elsewhere in the system. And then when we get around to refining this module, we replace this with a real thing, and the rest of the system doesn't change. All we do is we expand this. So we're going to expand these in place just like this. I'm going to remove the extra crapola that was only there to pander to the fact that I was not actually going to keep it around. So now we are officially keeping this stuff around. It also means that I could turn this into a faster loading base by having matter sources appear up here. In fact, I'm going to do that because I just have to get it running once. However, I will do that in future supply stations, not the current supply station. Bum-ba-da-bum. Good coffee. And again, here are our one of the reasons I want to actually remove these, we are thinking in terms of keeping this base efficient. Now, just having creative mod present is going to limit our UPS. So from here on, we will be able to test the throughput of the factory in terms of amount of science per second, science per 60 updates, or science per 3600 updates. We'll be able to measure that throughput. But because creative mod has such a large impact on our frame time, we won't really be able to get UPS measurements. What we can do is we can use this debug display to monitor our game update time, which will include all of the actual things that are part of the base. And when time comes to actually benchmark the final 900 science per minute base, when we've gotten all of the creative mod things out, what we can do is strip out these mods. We won't need creative mod or Farl or bottleneck. We just strip these out because they do have an impact. I'm going to leave mini loader in because we're using mini loaders in our base. I believe mini loaders are so low impact that they're going to be okay. But the rest of these, pretty much once we've built the base, we can do a save that doesn't have them to get an honest UPS for a 900 science per minute base out of this. So that's my rant on automated testing and creative mode in Factorio. I'm tempted, I'm going to cav this off just as a short one-off video rant. In fact, I'm going to call it video rant. Just to nail down what I'm going to commit to in the future. Now, I think previously I said I wouldn't use creative mod in the real save. I'd keep it all sequestered, but that's not possible. Not if I want to be able to just test the base. So, just to emphasize this, if I turn on my void technology, interesting. So part of the things that I have turned off in creative mode is I turned off the recipes for the research. So I think I have to turn on those. Yes, there it is. So I can turn on void science. And now if I let it fly, you see we are starting to use these. This will go for some time. We let the factory saturate. So this is going to be a typical benchmark run where we have to consume enough science that the trains go pull the science. And we have to consume enough train loads of the science source, in this case the rockets, so that their buffers are empty. So a benchmarking run will be basically I turn this on and I go sit and wait. And I can hear that I'm standing too close to the rockets for this test. So I'm going to go stand over here and go to map mode so we can watch our trains move around. That's the other thing that this gives us, is we can watch our factory move around. We can watch all the trains go where they're supposed to go. We will get notifications if any train runs out of fuel, for example. It would pop up on this thing. And we can pop this up and we could say, well, there's our previous test run. This is what happens when we key off a new test run here. We start consuming science, and then a few minutes later we start producing rockets. And we're going to have something similar ramping up on the other kinds of science production. if I look at the last 10 hours, this shows that I did a very long test run. This actually was at the end of the last video, I believe. Basically showing that we were sustaining 1,000 science per minute here. So it's very nice and solid. And I expect these results to actually be the same. So we're not going to let this do the whole thing. But that's the way that the benchmarks are going to run. And then we can turn off the research. And now we just wait for everything to go back to 0. And there we have it. And yes, I do very much like InfiniZoom and the tree X-ray mod that allows me to see through the trees, and the mod that allows me to walk between things that otherwise are adjacent, and I have turned on a couple of more mods. So for example, I have this mod which tells me, I believe this is FNEI does this, if I have an item, what it's an ingredient for, what it's a product of, and the recipe for that item. Very useful. The factory planner, this will augment what I've been doing with the two websites, Factorio Lab and the Kirk McDonald Factorio Calculator. If I do this in game, it means I don't have to mess around with my video capture software to map other windows in, yada yada yada, and that's kind of cool. All I would need now is a in-game way to take notes, and perhaps the better way to do that is to actually drop the notes in as nameplates. I've done that a few times in the build casually, so I would be able to do that, just on a normal basis. For example, I might want to start annotating what my expected throughputs were. Nail them down and set it in stone, so to speak. Make them big enough so that I can see them here. This wouldn't be nameplates. This would be just laying them out as concrete in a way that shows up on the mini map, so I could scan through. I'm not sure my base is going to be big enough scale for those kind of mini map labels to not completely dominate things. Anyway, so that's my take on automated testing in the Factorio context. And I am going to break this, and when we come back, I'm going to start planning out the first of the actual science builds. My intent is to run through the science in reverse order. So we're going to start with, say, either yellow or purple science. It's clear that red is you always go red-green. Military comes before chemical in the build area. I often build chemical first, especially if I'm in a save that has no biters. And then we have production science and utility science. And again, if I am building in a particular way, I believe it's, where did the robots go? If I am pushing for robots, I will tend to go for the yellow science before the purple science. So I often will build these out of order, but I'm going to go ahead and keep this order here. So I believe that my plan is now to build a yellow science area and a purple science area and a blue science area and a black science area and a green science area and a red science area in that order, heading them out to the east on this layer here, and having them output to below and input from above. And I will be building on top of ore patches. In fact, I think I am going to install a mod that lets me get rid of ore patches so that people don't freak out, oh, there's ore under that, let's get rid of the ore patch. So I have some notes off screen that I will keep. Inside my org file, I will add a to-do, install mod to remove ore patches. There. and we will run that at some point when this becomes painful. I do want to make sure that my science is far enough off to the right that my trains don't deadlock. I want to make sure that my output trains and my return trains for each science don't conflict with the next one. So it may be that I put them on radar centers. And because I'm not using a lot of radar, I think what I'm going to say is it is 7 of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, no, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this distance from here to here would be the distance from factory to factory. This is just temporary stuff. This is going to go away, so this won't count, but this counts as my first one. So save it up, and I will be right back with the build for yellow.